if we are around people who are upbeat, who are cheerful, who are kind, who are wise, who are compassionate, it is infectious. And the famous Framingham Heart Study showed that it affects people not just around you. The people who live next door to happy people were about 35% happier. And the people who lived next door to those neighbors were about 15% happier. And the person who lived next door to that second degree neighbor who didn't even know the primary person was about 6% happier. So we have an effect on those around us. Consciousness changes and is evolving.
Our thoughts and emotions have far more power to shape physical reality than most of us imagine. My guest on today's show, Dawson Church, has spent decades proving this through rigorous scientific research. Dawson is an award-winning author with 3 best-selling books to his credit, including Mind to Matter, which I've read and it is amazing. As a researcher, Dawson has demonstrated how emotions influence gene expression and how our brains actively construct the reality we experience. Through his Veteran Stress Solution Program, he's helped over 22,000 veterans heal from PTSD using his groundbreaking approaches. In our conversation, Dawson shares remarkable studies where consciousness has affected supposedly immutable forces of physics, from altering radioactive decay rates to shrinking cancer tumors through healing energy. All disclaimers apply. This is not medical advice. Consult your doctor. Yeah. Dawson explains the neurochemistry behind meditation's profound effects on the brain, reveals the science of synchronicity, and offers practical techniques for achieving transcendent states. Our discussion explores how anyone can access these heightened states of consciousness and use them to create positive change in their lives. This episode will challenge what you think you understand about the power of your mind and open your eyes to the extraordinary capabilities lying dormant within you. So without any further ado, on with the show. Dawson, it's so great to have you on the show.
Stephan, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to commend you on the book Mind to Matter because I haven't read all of it, but I've read a good chunk of it. My wife has read, I think, most, if not all of it, and so she was a fan before I even know who you were. And then, I don't believe in coincidences, that everything is kind of divinely orchestrated. Well, your PR person reached out to me literally the same day that I mentioned you and the Mind to Matter book on another podcast interview. So I knew that was the kind of orchestrated from above. So it's great to have you on. Loved Mind to Matter. One thing in particular I want to bring to the listeners' attention and get your additional commentary on is a story that you elaborated on in the book about a chi master who is able to change the decay rate of americium just by sending his chi energy to it. And that is not something that is supposedly changeable. You can't change the decay rate with extreme heat, exposing it to gravitational field or anything. It was modifiable, though, by this guy's chi energy, which was pretty mind-blowing. So I wanted to get your take on that.
Not only that, you can actually speed it up or slow it down. So when they said speed it up, he speeded it up. When they said slow down, he slowed it down. So it was variable in both directions as he applied chi to the radioactive substance. So yes, I mean, the 4 forces of physics are believed to be immutable natural laws. And it's just astonishing to read research showing that all 4 of them under certain circumstances are variable. Another wild one was, and in the first edition of the book, I did not explain the study very well. In the paperback version, I rewrote that section to really shine a spotlight on this. But it's it was a study that involved a healer called Bill Bankston. And Bill is very well known for like 30 years in the energy healing field. And he lays his hands on either people or often in experiments, mice. And these mice have cancer, very large tumors. The mice die usually between like day 14, day 19. Mice don't usually make it past day 21. And so he's just well known as being able to lay his hands on these mice and their tumors just shrink up and die. And so in this randomized controlled trial, he was the healer, and he was asked to project remote energy to the mice. And they were in a cage in a room in a lab on a university campus. And in a control cage in a different building on the same campus was a second cage of mice. But what made this experiment so interesting was that the researchers put a device below both cages, which measured the changes in electromagnetism in the environment. And again, that's supposed to be just something that's happening. I mean, the background electromagnetic field, it fluctuates slightly, it goes up and down, but it's just, electromagnetism is a constant. We have all kinds of electrical devices, and it'll say 110 volts or 220 volts, and we use these deliberately in all kinds of devices in our daily lives. So what was the way it was set up is that Bill was given a signal at random intervals, and so suddenly at 2 a.m. or 4:37 p.m. he'd get a beep, and that moment he then sent healing energy, but only to the experimental mice, not to the other group of mice via distance. And so, as always has happened in his other experiments, the mice in the cage in his experimental group got better. Their tumors disappeared. The mice in the control condition were unchanged. But at those random intervals, when he was sending his healing energy to those mice, the electromagnetism in the room changed, and it fluctuated by up to 22%, and not in the control room. So at totally random intervals, it was the same background as all the rest of the environment other times. Only at the times when at random he was sending energy was there a change in that EM field, and it was very substantial. So there are all these studies like this that make you think.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is so cool. These glitches in the matrix really do give me so much joy and certainty and comfort. And it's not just from reading about studies and anecdotes, but actually experiencing them myself in my regular daily life. I'm curious if you have any amazing glitches in the matrix type moments that you want to share.
I think one of the very, very first ones in my life happened many, many decades ago. And it was on a construction site, and I was working as a construction worker with a bunch of other people. And there was an accident, and a nail gun went through somebody's thumb. And so it was a nail, and the nail went into the ball of the thumb and came out through the middle of the thumbnail. And we did energy healing on this person's thumb. We just held our hands around it, and several people there had taken energy healing courses. I was one of them, and we just held our hands around the thumb, and it was crazy to see what happened. The thumb swelled up, turned purple, like it would normally do in the course of healing, and then the swelling went away, the purpleness went away, it turned red, and the thumbnail closed up. And the whole thing took about 20 minutes. So there are these accounts of miraculous healing. I also read some case histories of cancer tumors, and there are quite a few. I didn't think that cancer would be a big focus of the book when I began to write Mind to Matter, but there were so many interesting cancer stories of people's tumors literally melting, literally just disappearing, and sometimes very, very, very quickly when they were being treated by an energy healer. So what I also emphasize to people is, don't think this is some kind of magic that's going to fix everything. I mean, you may still need a prescription, and you may still need surgery. You may still need allopathic medicine for certain things. But if you're ignoring energy, if all you're doing is trotting off to your doctor and getting a pill, you are completely missing the potential of your mind, your body, energy fields, the collective field, the collective unconscious. Who knows what healing energies might be available to us? And so you want to the very first thing, whether it's even a cough or a cold, if I just feel a sniffle, I look at my attitude, look at my energy. Am I holding negative emotion? Negative emotion produces radical shift in the body. If you are hooking people up, to example, an EEG, and you have them feel any kind of negative emotion, resentment, blame, shame, guilt, you will see an immediate change. And what will happen is you'll see an expansion of beta waves, the fast waves of anxiety, and you'll see a contraction of theta and delta waves, our slowest waves, and you'll see a disappearance of alpha waves. And so here you have this big beta, and people having panic attacks, feeling a lot of negative emotion. You'll see massive beta. And so our body, and this isn't happening in 5 minutes, this is happening in a second after they had that negative thought. So the one thing, I've been hooked up to an EEG myself many times as well. And, I'm just so chill after, basically 50 years of meditation. I don't get upset about many things. But the one thing, Stephan, that'll still make my beta spike is if someone says to me, think about your email inbox. I looked the other day, there were 55,000 unread messages. It's like, oh. But you want to really control that negative emotion.
I've got a solution for that. So when you get an EEG scan, are you one thing about EEGs I find fascinating, and this is just such a cool video I found. I don't know how, it's just the things that are shown to me. I'm just kind of like, they're just put right in front. Like it's the algorithm that the angels are somehow utilizing or subverting or whatever. So I'll see featured, on the YouTube homepage or something, one of these videos. And this one was really a profound one. It's Dr. Daniel Amen, who was a past guest on this podcast, a brain expert, author of Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. And he was running an EEG analysis on the psychic of Long Island. So the Long Island psychic, she's got her own TV show, or did, pretty famous celebrity. And he was doing an EEG study while she was doing a reading. So she was doing a reading, I think maybe on him or something, and so he was, or maybe someone else in the room. I forget exactly the details, but I'll find it and have my team put into the show notes this whole video. It's really impressive. Like it's irrefutable when you look at what's happening in her analysis of her brain activity while she's doing the reading versus not. It's very clear that she's accessing something more than just normal. And I don't know if you've seen any kind of analysis like that, or this sparks any studies that come to mind or anything like that. What do you have to share about that?
Without even knowing her name, what she was doing, anything about her, I can predict that she had a lot of delta, the slowest wave at the base. She had quite a bit of theta, maybe even more theta than delta. She had very small beta. There was not a lot of conscious mind processing over there. Her prefrontal cortex was probably very inactive. If we had her inside of an MRI, we would see probably a shutdown of the prefrontal cortex. You can't think yourself into these states. These are being states, not doing states or thinking or executive states. So very, very small beta, and then probably enormous gamma. And some of the Tibetan monks that have been studied some of them have up to 25 times the gamma of normal people, just extraordinary amounts of gamma. And gamma is the wave of integration. Gamma is the wave of all parts of the brain working effectively, synchronously together. It's the wave of compassion. People who are really compassionate, who are altruistic, have lots of gamma. It's the wave of awe. It's the wave of gratitude. It's the wave of thanksgiving. It's the wave of pro-social emotions. So I bet she had lots of gamma, and that she probably had a significant bridge of alpha connecting those higher frequencies of gamma and beta with the two lower frequencies of theta and delta. So we've seen this pattern in tens of thousands of people. It's called the awakened mind. You find it in South American shamans. You find it in Qigong masters. You find it in Pentecostal Christian faith healers when they're doing their faith healing thing. But you also find it in people in flow. So you find it in athletes. You find it in peak performers of various kinds. And it's a very distinctive brainwave. And yeah, we know it well. We know what it's going to look like, and we can predict when people are in that space just by their brainwave signature patterns.
Amazing. Amazing. And have you done analysis on your own EG when you're doing some sort of meditation or breath work or something where you're accessing awakened states?
Yeah, I've been I learned meditation when I was a teenager, and then I've been doing it every single day, pretty much without fail at this point for more than 25 years. And what happens is that if you meditate effectively, you really get addicted to meditation because it feels so good. It's like the most pleasurable thing you can do. In my follow-up book, Bliss Brain, I talk about the neurochemicals of meditation, and they're neurochemicals like dopamine. The meditation in dopamine, in an effective meditation, dopamine rises 65% in the brain. That's pretty much like getting a shot of cocaine or heroin. I mean, that's just like you feel really good. When your dopamine rises 65%, that triggers a rise in serotonin. Also, people who are doing loving kindness, metta meditation, compassion meditation, they have a rise in oxytocin, and that's the love hormone, the love drug. And so when you meditate effectively and you're feeling in love, but not with a particular person, you're in love with the divine, you're in love with the universe, you're in love with the all that is. You feel these immense waves of love just shaking you sometimes. So that's why shakers shake and quakers quake. And some of the Buddhists in meditation, they're just vibrating. Their bodies are orgasmically moving with that feeling of wonderful connection with the all that is. That's oxytocin. And that triggers beta endorphin. When high levels of oxytocin trigger beta endorphins, so now you get a big shot of endorphins. Beta endorphin is ounce for ounce is 3 times as potent as synthetic morphine. So here we have this massive rise in endorphin, and you feel fantastic. So you meditate, you feel good. That motivates you to meditate again, and then you get into a pattern of doing it. And one lady I give people a 30-day meditation challenge, and I developed a meditation called Eco Meditation in 2009 because I wanted something evidence-based. So it stacks various evidence-based techniques, one on top of the other, 5 of them. And so when you do eco meditation, in about 5 minutes, you're feeling that shot of serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, anandamide, beta endorphin, and you feel fantastic. And I say, just do it 30 days. All I ask is you do it every single day without fail, 20 minutes for a month. And one lady walked up to me at a workshop and said, Dawson, I took your 30-day challenge. It was great. 30 days without fail meditation. And I was so happy for her. And I said, well, what day are you on right now? And she said, I'm on day 147. And that was really fabulous because I knew then she was addicted. She's addicted to her own dopamine and serotonin and anandamide and oxytocin. You get to the point where you just love feeling that good. Your body wants to feel that good, and you keep up with the practice. So that's that awakened mind state. You get there through meditation, get there through peak performance, get there through meditation in the morning. You'll stay in a state of flow much of the day, and your whole day will just work out much better.
Mm-hmm. And that's 20 minutes in the morning. Are you doing longer than that, or is that your usual?
Well, initially, we need to get people to where that lady said she was. We need to get people there. So eco meditation, for the first time they do it, they'll generally realize there's a there, and they want to go back there again. Like any good addict does, they'll want to get another fix the next day. So after a few days, weeks, months, you are there. And so we get people there, and then they tend to want to extend the experience. It's so pleasurable that you'll want to probably go beyond 15, 20 minutes to 30 minutes to 40 minutes to longer. The challenge we face after about a year, when we have several programs, we have like month-long programs, we have a year-long program called the Short Path to Oneness, which uses all of the traditional Eastern methods to bring you to these states of oneness, but they're all filtered through the lens of neuroscience. So we have this highly scientific way of bringing you to those states quickly. And we find after a year, we then have the challenge of bringing people back down again because they are so addicted. They just want to go up there and they'll be meditating at that point often 2 hours a day. And they'll be having trouble interfacing with their lives. They'll be missing their doctor's appointments and they'll be forgetting to pick their kids up from school. And they'll be, I mean, they won't be. That's the challenge of meditation. After a while, it's so pleasurable. You're so far out there. So the whole last part of the short path to oneness is bringing them back down into their bodies to integrate those experiences of everyday life. Because you still have to change your kid's diaper and you still have to show up and take your medications and be there for work or bad things happen. So initially, it's that 15, 20 minutes that's crucial. After a while, you extend it because it's so pleasurable. And then when you start to hit the upper ranges of what's called samadhi, these upper layers, it's actually called upper samadhi, then the challenge becomes to bring them back down and integrate them and be able to live a life where you at least look normal enough to where people don't call 911 when you show up.
Right. And are you doing meditation more than once a day, or is it just once in the morning?
One of the things we train people to do in the short path to oneness is we want them to meditate first thing in the morning for sure. We want them to do a practice before they go to bed because if you go to bed in the right frame of mind, a lot of your sleep and dream life changes. One thing that we find very common is that people become lucid dreamers. And they don't try and become lucid dreamers, they just become natural lucid dreamers. And the definition of lucid dreamer is simply someone who knows the dreaming. So they just know the dreaming, and then they can change their dreams. And then if the devil shows up, you just say, if you're in the middle of the movie Jaws and the shark shows up and is about to eat you, and you're a lucid dreamer, you say, I think I'm going to turn that shark into a hand puppet. And then you do. And so you start to shape your dreams and you start to then use your dreams to move you to elevated states. So now you're actually not meditating only during your morning and evening meditation. You're using most of your 8 hours of sleep to meditate or enter elevated states. And my personal little hack I use is I have a printout next to my bed of this cave in Burma, Myanmar, called the Cave of 10,000 Buddhas. And there are all these Buddha statues in the cave. And I just look at that every night before I go to bed and picture myself sleeping in the cave of 10,000 Buddhas. I get great sleep usually. I fall asleep quickly. And then I'm in that liminal space most of the night, in that altered state as well. So now you aren't just getting your morning and evening meditation, you're getting your 8 hours of sleep in this altered state as well with anandamide and serotonin and dopamine and all these wonderful neurochemicals. And so you wake up feeling incredibly good. And then of course you move to the next pinnacle in your morning practice. So morning and evening is good. And then if you can use a sleep hack to move yourself into that kind of a space, then a lot of your night is spent in positive mental states. And of course, at night, we're in delta most of the night. Delta is the state of pruning. So your brain is now pruning away, cleaning up all of the old stuff that made you unhappy. It's also during your rapid eye movement sleep, theta sleep, every hour and a half or so, it is wiring together. So you're pruning unwanted neural pathways in delta. In theta, you are building new neural pathways, and those neural pathways, again, what's nicer than to pretend you're in heaven or pretend you're in the cave of 10,000 Buddhas or anything that really moves you? Mother Mary is cradling you in her arms, whatever your imagery is. So now you're generating all this activity in your brain to prune stuff you don't want, to wire together in theta those positive images, and you're using your sleep for meditative change in your brain as well.
That's super cool. I think a lot of us do the opposite of that and get into the cave of 50,000 unread emails, as I call them.
Been there, done that too.
Yeah, yeah. And I promised you a solution for your 50,000 unread emails.
Delete them all. What is it? Tell me.
Yeah, I learned this from David Allen, who wrote Getting Things Done and is the creator of the GTD methodology, an incredible productivity expert. And this process involves just creating a folder called DMZ, Demilitarized Zone, and dragging all of your email inbox, and it doesn't matter how many tens of thousands of emails are in there, just the entire thing into that folder. And now you start fresh with 0 emails. And you're not deleting anything because it's all there in that separate DMZ folder, but at least you give your brain a break from the overwhelm when you go right to your inbox, and you can't process and deal with all the backlog. It's just too much, but you can start fresh from today and develop some new habits. And so that was really, really helpful for me.
Good. I like that. Yeah, so what I do is I just hit reply to any of them I plan to reply to. That way, they have a little red tag next to them. Reply, so I kind of do that now, and I don't feel bad about that. I mean, every once in a while, I do stuff, and I sit there and like Bill Bankston holding his hands above the mice. I sit there and I say to everyone, "Bless you. Thanks for emailing me."
That's pretty. That's a nice bonus, even for the spammers.
Does
Like,
that count?
yeah, nice, nice. So, if you want to take it to another level, this is what I do. I have my assistant manage my inbox for me, so I entrust her with the keys to my kingdom because I get a lot of emails every day, and she then puts stuff either in the archives, which is most of the stuff, or an action folder where I go and I check. I try to stay out of my inbox. And she does this throughout the day, every day. So I go into my email, and my inbox usually has no more than maybe 50 emails in it. And then I try to just keep my head out of that and go straight to the action folder to look at the things that are for me to action. She won't put stuff in there that she's going to action for me, only the things that I'm required to action. And then there's a second folder that I check, but not quite as often, and that's the read review folder. So anything where I'm CC'd, but it's not an essential thing for me to take an action on, it's just for me to stay in the loop on a particular important client or whatever, that's the read review folder. And everything else goes into archives, and I stay out of the archives, and I try to stay out of the inbox, although it is tempting sometimes. Yeah. And that's really a great way to manage email. It's a lifesaver. I couldn't imagine going back to managing my own inbox anymore.
Yeah, having an assistant to do that and screen things for you is really powerful, and then only get the ones to you that you really need to pay attention to, not all the others that people think you need to pay attention to, but maybe you don't.
Right. And then to draft emails for me so that I don't have to start from scratch, even if it's in the action folder. A lot of times she'll have drafted an email for me to just tweak and then hit send.
Yeah, that's also great because then you have the outline of something. And I do a lot of my writing that way. I have a writer who I'll say, I want a story about this particular person, and then they'll write up the story for me. I'll have the outline of it over there, and I'll develop it from there. I also find AI is useful for that. Although AI, if I found, is kind of like a what's the way to put, like a very a mediocre assistant.
Yeah.
um yeah, so I've used like using GTP4, and it's okay for the outline, but it's very bland. It's like not
It's uninspired, really.
right. It's insipid. So
Yeah. I like starting with just tuning into God and getting insights and nudges and ideas from the universal intelligence, not from ChatGPT.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
the concept that is so powerful there is the idea of the psychosphere. I talk about that in Mind to Matter. And Teilhard de Chardin in the 50s talked about the noosphere, about the sum total of all consciousness on Earth. But actually, it's the sum total of all consciousness in the universe. And then Erwin Laszlo talks about these information, is a famous physicist. And he talks about these information fields we live in, and we can download, we can tap into those information fields. And just the way you got the perfect study or the perfect piece of information you needed, or you thought about having me on the show, and then suddenly, you get an email about having me on the show. Um, if, in Mind to Matter, eventually near the end of the book, I thought, I'm going to write a little piece here on all the synchronicities that went into writing the chapter on synchronicity. I mean, it's
Hmm.
just astounding how many synchronicities there were. And after a while, you find that your life is this way. You simply expect your life to be this way because it has been for the of the recent past. And research actually shows that meditators have far more synchronicity, far more clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience, ESP of all kinds in their lives than non-meditators, and it scales too. The more you do, the more synchronous your life becomes. And imagine if we were living in a synchronous universe where all of these things happen very naturally. And after a while, if you've been doing this, you just expect that because that actually is the way the universe seems to work. Now, what's really interesting though is what happens for those parts of your life where it's not working, because everybody seems to get one or two areas of their lives where the magic doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And those are also full of lessons for us.
What's your areas where you don't get where the lessons are harder?
I think for me, I have always found investing a lot of mental effort and work. So I've done a fair amount of trading of individual stocks over the years, like the last 20, 30 years. And it's always been a chore. It's never something I'm like thrilled at doing. So sometimes I'll stick a bunch of money in a index fund, and so that's an area where I can't say I have any had any ability to. I mean, some things predictably I've been able to call at the right time, but like I have one friend who was a top banker in Hong Kong for his whole career, and he showed me his portfolio, and he gets it right about 60% of the time, and the other 40% not. So that's one area where I'm not a superstar.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, if one has anxiety or uncertainty in a particular area, it does cloud the receiving. If you're just emotionally charged neutral about that, completely unattached, then it's a lot easier to receive clear signals from above.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. Good exercise, thoughtful question. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned earlier how you look at your energy, and I'm curious how you see that or experience that. Do you have clairvoyance? Do you actually see people's energy fields like auras? Do you get a claircognizance kind of knowing that something is affecting your energy, or how does that work for you?
I get intuitive hits. And when I'm working with people one on one, and I don't work with many clients, I do have a few people I work with on our Short Path to Oneness program who I mentor. But I get intuitive hits, and I always check them out with the client to see if they're real or not. But they almost always are remarkably accurate. I'll just sense something. And when I'm with people in person, I also do a fair amount of in person live presentations and workshops. And I do see a little bit of energy around people, not vivid rainbow colors, but I'll see like maybe a dark shadow of someone's left shoulder. I'll think, what's all that all about?
Mhm.
And then often they'll report something like, "Ooh, I have this pain in the back of my left shoulder." So the story comes out later. So I'm not one of those energy visual energy seers like Donna Eden who sees rainbow colors around people. I sense things. And it's also I think a skill which we develop. So the more you focus on your intuition, the more you develop it. And then with my wife, I'm so grateful to have been married for a very long time to a wonderful human being, and when I say things to her and I'm impatient or I'm not really listening to her carefully, then I realize my energy is a little bit off. And I think, I can do better than that as a husband. I can, or as a teammate too, if I'm talking to a member of my team and I'm impatient or I interrupt them or something like that, it's like, okay, Dawson, the energy that's not the energy you want to be in the world. So I'll correct myself. So that's the other part of it. It doesn't feel good to me to be that person who's not really respectful and tuned into my wife. So I find with my grandchildren, children, close family members, I really have to work at keeping my energy high. And when I find myself acting a little less than I know I can be, a little less than my finest, I try and catch myself and correct.
Well, that's a great thing to aspire towards. I'm curious if you ever have experiences on podcasts where you show up for an interview and the person on the other end of the mic is maybe not so great energy and you're getting like a dark cloud sort of feeling about that person and you want to just excuse yourself from the interview.
No, what happens is that they get come into flow. I'm good at in training people, and so it usually happens when I in fact I had two of those podcasts last week where the person was kind of low energy and was really I could tell was chugging along and really dealing with some difficult things personally, perhaps, and their questions were from that perspective. And I know I can just work with people and talk to them. And both of those guests, they were just smiling and laughing and as happy as could be within about 10 minutes. So our energy is infectious. And I talk about, in Mind to Matter, I talk about the whole phenomenon of emotional contagion. And it works even over Zoom. It works over Riverside. It works over any kind of teleconferencing system as well. And if we are around people who are upbeat, who are cheerful, who are kind, who are wise, who are compassionate, it is infectious. And the famous Framingham Heart Study showed that it affects people not just around you. In the Framingham Heart Study, they were looking at people physically in Framingham, Massachusetts, and measuring their happiness levels. And they found that the people who lived next door to happy people were about 35% happier. And the people who lived next door to those neighbors were about 15% happier. And the person who lived next door to that second degree neighbor who didn't even know the primary person was about 6% happier. So we have an effect on those around us. Consciousness changes and is evolving. And we generally can seek out people who are like us. And by being loving and happy, we are able to shift the world. Ramana Maharshi, the great non-dualist teacher in India in the 1920s and 1930s, like when World War II broke out, he stayed in India and he was very much in his same meditative space. And one day someone said to him, Bhagavan, here the world is in flames and what you're doing is you're sitting here on a meditation couch in India. All you're doing is sitting there in meditation. And he said, how do you know that all I'm doing is sitting here in meditation? So our energy spreads. And the studies on distant healing are so interesting that having the intention of distant healing is really powerful. And the Maharishi effect has been studied extensively now, how that groups of people believing in kindness and compassion literally can have an effect on remote locations. So for us, Ramana Maharshi also said, if you want to change the world, start with yourself. Gandhi said much the same thing. So even though it's tempting to want to say, I want to go change the corporations, I want to go change the government, I want to go change all of these bad people doing bad things, what are you in your innermost heart? What are you doing when nobody sees what you're doing? We train our practitioners in ethics. We say, if there was a spotlight, if there was a little hovering security camera around you all the time, how would you act? Now go act that way.
Right. I mean, because there are no private thoughts. You're being watched, listened to, not just by God, but by a big audience in the upper worlds. angels and loved ones and so many souls that are rooting for you, that are kind of, following you through your journey, and you end up in low vibration thoughts, and they're watching that all unfold, without judgment, but still they're watching you thinking about whatever you shouldn't be thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So live your life that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. One exercise I think you'd enjoy hearing about, I learned from Jay Lasco, who's an amazing healer. She explains that, and she had me do this exercise in one of my sessions with her. She said, imagine your energy is just below the surface of your skin. Okay. And it's filling your body, but just almost to the surface of your skin. Now expand out an inch above your skin. Now expand your energy out even more to fill the room. And then again, even more to fill the neighborhood. And then expand your energy even more and fill the city or town that you're in. And then expand it to fill the state or province. And then the country. And then the entire planet. And then the solar system. And you could keep going. Like I kept going all the way to filling the entire universe with my energy. And then reverse it back. So now to the solar system, or to the Milky Way galaxy, then to the solar system, then to the Earth, then to your country, state, city, neighborhood, room, then back to above your skin an extra inch, and then underneath your skin. And that's such an amazing exercise. And she was able to feel it too while I'm doing all that expansion and then contraction. She was coming along for the ride.
Yeah, and we are consciousness. Rumi said that you aren't a drop in the ocean, you are the ocean in a drop. And so our consciousness, our human consciousness, participates in all of consciousness. And what I found to my astonishment, I had no idea I'd write this in Mind to Matter, but what is affecting all four forces, fundamental forces of physics, is consciousness. Consciousness changes and the physical universe changes. And so the fact that you can visually have that picture of expanding to have your consciousness be the universe and then back to this small body. Stephan, we are immensely privileged to have a body, be here breathing, and be one, be able to become one with consciousness. The other thing that's happening, which I think is underappreciated, very poorly understood in terms of its impact in both neuroscience and by the average person, is the effect this has on your brain. It is changing your brain substantially. And I did this one randomized controlled trial with some very talented colleagues at Bond University, and we had people in MRIs doing my 5-step eco meditation procedure for a month, and then the control group did mindful breathing. And we had them do an MRI scan at the beginning of the month and the end of the month. And after only 1 month, we found significant structural and functional changes in their brains. And the part of the brain that handles suffering and regret and rumination about the past and fear of the future, that part of the brain just was quiet, much quieter in the group doing eco meditation. And the compassion circuit of the brain, the insula, gratitude, love, awe, joy, compassion, lit up dramatically after just 1 month. So when we are entering these elevated states, not only can we go to the edges of the universe in our consciousness and come back again, it's changing the physical structure of the material body and brain we inhabit. And it's not just changing it a little bit, it's changing it dramatically. And one of the case histories in Mind to Matter, that there was one particular person whose brain was measured before and after learning mindfulness. And in 2 months, the emotion regulation circuit in his brain grew 22.8%. In 2 months, 8 weeks,
Yeah.
22% growth in that piece of tissue. So we are changing our brains, and that in turn changes our body. That in turn shapes our lives. So we have this immense privilege of being able to be one with the universe, and then have a body, and then have that shape our body, and that make that dramatic change in our outer lives as well as our inner perception.
Yeah. Have you heard of a part of the brain called the God box?
Um, is part of the caudate nucleus?
I don't know anything other than that's just the name that I heard. I don't remember even when, but it was maybe decades ago. It's a part of the brain that when it's stimulated, like if they use electrodes and the skull is, partially removed, by stimulating that part of the brain, they're able to have a transcendental experience, an experience of the oneness.
Yes, and that's just the flick of a switch that stimulating that part of the brain generates those altered states. So yeah,
Yeah,
and we in fact do it ourselves. We can do it naturally. But yeah,
right.
that was a particular patient of a particular doctor who had an electrode there, and he was able to stimulate these just by the flick of a switch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we are wired to experience God.
We are wired to experience extraordinary states. We're wired to be one with the all that is. We're wired for ecstasy. And one of the baffling things to me is that people who are wired for ecstasy spend so much of their time suffering. And they have that suffering part of the brain turned up. And what that does is it actually turns down the ecstatic circuits. So in Bliss Brain, I talk about the enlightenment network of our brain. And when we're stressed, it shuts down. When we're meditating, it lights up. So these two networks function in opposition to each other. And so we spend so much of our time suffering unnecessarily when if we were just able to breathe, just able to step back, be mindful, to disentangle ourselves from our everyday thinking, we would find ourselves ecstatic every day. I've been challenging myself for the last 3, 4, 5 months. When I'm less than 100% happy during the day, maybe I'm only at 96%, I'll say, why am I down 4%? What excuse do I have for that? And usually it's just some old habit. So I'll do some EFT tapping usually, which is tapping on acupressure points, which releases that old habit, that old pattern, that old energy, and boom, I'm back up to 100. So why not live your life at 100? Why not make 100 your default state? You have the machinery in your brain to do that. Why not turn it on and live that way?
That's great. Yes. And are you normally hearing God, you're hearing the creator, the oneness in your head, like clairaudience? Are you just walking in step with that oneness and just an inner knowing? Do you get messages in the form of like images in your third eye, or visions? Like how does that work for you?
You probably will experience a lot of those phenomena on the spiritual journey. And so it is a developmental path, and there are milestones on the developmental path, and we help people track where on that journey they are. And so there are going to be times when it becomes visual for you or it becomes auditory for you, and you may download messages, you may hear heavenly music. There are other phenomena that you might experience. I mean, energy flows in your body, strong iconic symbolism, archetypal symbolism, archetypes themselves. And so all of those are phenomena that occur on the spiritual journey. But what Patanjali says in the Yoga Sutras is that for the ordinary people, for the ordinary human being, these are enormous accomplishments. For the meditator, for the person on the path, they are obstacles. And what you will find yourself doing is you'll find yourself moving through them. And where the mystics end up eventually at the end of the path is whether it's the Christian tradition, the Sufi tradition, the Hindu or Buddhist tradition, you wind up at a place that they all call something like the silence, the great emptiness, the great fullness, the void. is one term they use. And what you find when you get there is this enormous, infinite presence. It's simply the present moment. It's contentless. There's no intention there. There are no prayers there. There are no beings there. It's simply this. It's a paradox because it's infinitely full, infinitely empty, infinitely spacious, and eternal. And so you certainly can, like, if I'm going to write a book, for example, I can't just go into the void. There'll be no book at the end of it. But what I can do then is move from that into practical action. So there's a time to be in the void. There's a time to enter that space. And then there's a time to come back and change the diapers and interact with your team members and do your regular life. So it's fine to go there. But personally, I just go to the void every morning meditation for a while, and then I step back down to the level of ordinary reality. So you might hear those sounds and see visions and have a lot of pyrotechnics on the way. The Vedas calls them cities or powers, but again, they're those that heavenly music, those channel messages, and all of these wonderful altered experiences we have along the way, they'll last for they're part of the developmental path, but at a certain point you move past them and you simply are experiencing this infinite void.
So you are one with all that is.
Yeah, and you're also not separate from all that is. There's no sense of I. There's no sense of oneness. There's no sense of I as a separate being from the oneness. There is only this one being. And so you're a participant in this one consciousness that there is in the universe.
Yeah. Yeah. So Dr. Joe Dispenza, in some of his meditations, he'll talk about being nobody in no time, in no place, or nowhere. And yeah, that's essentially what you're talking about here.
And it's not a goal. It's not like you say, okay, I'm going to experience the void. I'm going to train myself to experience the void. In fact, your training, one of the stages of this short path, is very difficult for people. And there are a lot of difficult, I mean, this is a 1 year training program we offer, and there are several really difficult junctions to it. One of those is where you have to give up all of your beliefs, all of your practices, all of your favorite meditations, all of your favorite spiritual tools. And it is often scary for people. They say, it's this that keeps me sober. It's this that keeps me motivated. It's this that keeps me on track. How can I give it up? And yet the very thing that got you to say milestone 16 is the obstacle that will prevent you getting to milestone 17. So the void is not something aspirational. It's not like Buddhist teachers will say, okay, now I'm going to train you to get to the void. It's achieved by surrender and grace. So grace is ineffable. Surrender is something that is you do where you're simply letting go of that sense of I. But again, letting go of that sense of I can be very, very disorienting to people. If you've believed I am the top real estate producer in my district, in my area, I am a wonderful father. I'm a terrible father. Whatever your I story is. As all those I stories begin to crumble and disappear, and you're there in the void, that's why we have mentors to help people guide them through these kinds of shifts in their personalities.
Yeah. Amazing. Oh, I know we're out of time, so this is quite the cliffhanger to leave people on. So, where should we send them to have them learn more? Maybe get your books and study and practice EFT, tapping, and some of the other amazing modalities that we've touched on.
The best place is to go to my website, dawsongift.com. That's my name, DAWSON gift, and download the EFT mini manual, flip to the back page of the PDF. It's EFT on a page, and just try it out on any anxiety you have right now. So that's the first thing to do, dawsongift.com. Download the meditation, because that's the meditation we used in that study to show that after a month, it's literally shifting your brain's function. So all of that's at dawsongift.com. From there, go check out our practitioners, have a an EFT practitioner to help you through any big challenges, check out the short path. We have tons of content there, thousands of pages, thousands of stories of people who've used these things, and then they write it and say, I did this, these are my results, and they'll share with you. So that one site, dawsongift.com, is where you have access to all those other resources.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll include that in the show notes, of course, as well. And yeah, any last wisdom nugget you want to leave our listener or viewer with before we close out this episode?
Go and have a blast. You're here to have fun, to thoroughly enjoy yourself, to be at 100. Go out and laugh and fill your life with joy. Why live any less?
That's great advice. Thank you, Dawson. And thank you, listener. We'll catch you in the next episode. In the meantime, make it a fantastic week. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off. If you want to hear more conversations like this on science and spirituality, then I recommend episode 388 with Jeffrey Allen, episode 451 with Dr. Lisa Koch, and episode 468 with Aaron Bigelow. Also, I invite you to check out the show notes, transcript, action-based checklist, and all the URLs mentioned in this interview with Dawson Church at getyourselfoptimized.com/498. If you enjoyed the conversation, I encourage you to share this episode, and more importantly, the entire show, Get Yourself Optimized, with a friend. Change your life and help me spread the light. Thank you.